In a little while, we hope to be joined by Quentin Brogdon. Quentin is a Dallas trial lawyer. The big question here is, can your employer tell you to get the COVID-19 vaccine or lose your job? Can they force you to do that? Now, recently I visited with Ed and Nancy Schaefer. Now, those are two names that a lot of people in North Dakota know. Ed was a very popular governor, former Secretary of Agriculture for the nation under the Bush administration. And Ed was one of those individuals that everybody got a chance to get to know. And, you know, Governor Schaefer was pushing hard for people to get vaccinated. I don't know if that's going to help or not. I know that it's great that he's trying. The big question, as we mentioned, is we want to ask Mr. Brogdon is whether or not employers can tell you you have to get vaccinated. So let's welcome him in. Quentin Brogdon, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Great to be back, Joe. How are you doing?
You bet. Now, as a trial lawyer, you know what it's like to represent that client and to stick up for that client. And so I'm going to begin with the obvious first question. If I was an employer and I wanted to look to that employee and say, you must get vaccinated or you're not coming to work here, what's your answer to that? Could I, as an employer, do that?
Well, the first analysis you do is you look at what state you're in. You need to make sure there's not a specific state law. But generally, we can talk about the federal regulations and laws, and most states fall into at least rough line with that. The federal law says you can require someone to be vaccinated as long as you accommodate their sincerely held religious beliefs under a law called Title VII, and their disabilities that make them more prone to an adverse reaction under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So you have a duty to reasonably accommodate those. But other than that, you can require as an employer, an employee to be vaccinated as long as your state doesn't prohibit it.
Okay. You say Title VII. Okay. Best example I can give you. I have some people where I work and I manage there, where I work on a daily basis that will not get vaccinated. They claim that it's because of medical reasons. Can I require them to bring basically a slip from their doctor saying that's what I said, these guys shouldn't get vaccinated?
Can you as an employer require proof that they have a medical reason?
Yes.
You need to be careful. You need to have open lines of communication with your employees. You can require proof that they've been vaccinated, and you can give them avenues to let you know and to communicate with you that they have, for instance, sincerely held religious beliefs or disabilities that make them more prone. But you need to be very careful in getting into screening questions yourself. One of the things that at least some lawyers have advised is for employers to use third-party services to do that. So it's not the employer asking the question directly. It's merely a process to see that through. But you're right, Joel, probably 1 in 4, 1 in 5, depending on the statistics you read, of people out there say that they will just flatly refuse to get the vaccine. And I think that's why many employers are hesitating before they require it. It's an easier analysis if the employee works in a high-risk occupation. They work for a hospital, they work in a nursing home. But if it's a white-collar employee who sits behind a desk all day long, it's a little more difficult analysis. So you might, if you're an employer, want to consider making it voluntary, trying to incentivize your employees to get it. And there are some rules about what you can and can't do in that regard, but at least not mandating it unless you have to. And accommodations as an employer could include letting employees who can work from home, work remotely, for instance.
So, Quentin, I've had COVID. I have no idea where I got it. I've had it. Just like most people when it comes to COVID. Some people have a strong idea where they got it. They might even know where they got it. When it comes to that employer-employee situation, can that employee that refuses to get vaccinated, can they in any way, shape, or form hold the employer responsible? And the reason I ask this is because where I work, we have a strict policy of you, when you're around anyone, must wear a mask. When you go down the hallway, when you go into an office setting, when you're together. You know, I work in radio as my full-time job, and when you go in there, you've got to wipe everything down. All of those steps. At some point, we're going to quit that. we're going to quit that because the vast majority of the people in that workplace have been vaccinated. The vaccine has been made available to the others. They don't want it. And so what I'm asking, I guess, is this. Long way of asking this question, Quentin, but if those individuals that refuse it won't come to work and they get it, can they blame the employer for it?
So just generally, if you work for a company and you believe you've contracted the virus at work, in many states, you're going to be covered automatically by workers' compensation insurance. And there will be a whole statutory, meaning it's enacted by the legislature, it's a law, a whole scheme that controls what you can recover for and what you recover. And those schemes generally do not just allow you to walk down to the courthouse and sue your employee. Generally, you make a claim, you go through a system and a process. Depending on the state, some states have enacted special laws and special regulations about COVID to say it either is or is not covered by workers' comp. California, for instance, says if you get it at work, it's covered by workers' comp. But not all states are like that, so there could be ambiguity. Some states, a minority of states, including my home state of Texas, allow employers to be what's called non-subscribers, not to offer as workers' comp insurance. And in those states, the employees of those employers who opt out of the system, the workers' comp system, can sue their employers. But they still would have a proof problem. They would have to prove they contracted it at work, which won't be easy.
Yeah. Yeah, that is the problem. I mean, I think that's... I've had individuals in my life that say, I got it from so-and-so, and I've got it from so-and-so. And then you track backwards, and they went to a bar, or they went to a clubhouse, or they went to all these different places, which they don't know where they got it. I mean, it's my personal opinion that they don't know where they got it. What about private industry in this sense, Quentin? I'm assuming you're a Rangers fan. Can I assume that?
It's tough to be sometimes, but yes, you can make the assumption.
Okay, well, it's tough to be a Twins fan sometimes, but here in the North Country, we're Twins fans. If the Minnesota Twins tell us that, you know what, you're not going to get into the stadium because we now finally can get a full crowd until you can give us some proof of vaccination, can the Twins do that?
Well, again, it depends on the state, and it also probably depends on some of the agreements that these franchises have with the leagues. You know, Major League Baseball, there are contracts that the Twins and the Rangers have signed that govern what they can do and what they can't do at games. So you'd want to look at the state and you want to look at that contract, and I don't know the answer to see whether it prohibits it. But if it does not prohibit it, and if the state does not prohibit it, probably private places such as airlines, Twins, games, managers, etc., can require proof of vaccination. I know some of your viewers are not going to want to hear that, but legally, unless there's a specific statewide impediment or something in a contract that a football team or a baseball team signs that says you can't do that when you invite people to the games in our league, then probably that could be made a requirement.
Okay. Well, okay, let me take it another direction. In the state of Minnesota, Governor Walz shut her down. He shut it down, and then he went to a quarter, and I think he went to a half. But here's the question: some of the bars said no, we're going to stay open. We're going to do what we want to do, and now the enforcement has come along with that. In fact, one bar owner in Minnesota was arrested over the weekend with the governor making that proclamation, and then the bar owner saying, "Nope, I'm not going to do it." Would you take the case of that bar owner?
You know, it would be a tough case. Some of the lawyers who take those kinds of cases, and some of the bars, frankly, that choose to stay open, are doing it to make new law or to send a message. So if you say take the case to make a recovery for the bar owner with a reasonable prospect of, quote, winning the case, not necessarily. But if you ask me, take the case to make a broader societal point about free speech or control of the government over individuals, those tend to be the motives that those kinds of cases are governed by, at least in my view, reading about them in the news and talking to other lawyers.
You know, you want to hire a lawyer, ladies and gentlemen, with common sense, and you just heard one. Quentin, thank you. Thanks for coming on with us again.
Thanks, Joel. Stay safe in Minnesota.
You too. When we come back, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get an opportunity to give you some closing thoughts right here as we go down the road.